And for all the online viewers, we have James Lewis in the stage. He's a Welsh rugby fan. That's the first thing I know about you. He's also a consultant at ThoughtWorks, a developer, and he can talk a lot, I guess, about microservices. That's the topic, right? You were talking about today.
Yeah, kind of. I was kind of talking about the sort of basis, really, the underlying principles, I think, behind why I think that architectural style works. Because I've been sort of involved in building systems out of microservices for best part of 10 years, I suppose, and wrote an article about them 5 years ago now. And this year I've sort of been looking for why it's been so successful, really, because it's turned into like a $30+ billion industry. And yeah, so it was about complex adaptive systems, complexity science.
Why is it successful, microservices? What would be the key idea for the ones who missed your talk?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So I think personally it's because it allows organizations to scale in a way that they couldn't scale before, or encourages them to scale in a way they couldn't scale before. So small teams building cohesive, decoupled bits of software, which you can then scale or add more of, as opposed to the traditional way, which we'd scale around layers typically, or job roles, job functions, so lots of devs, lots of testers, and run projects, which tended to lead to more monolithic, more difficult to scale software.
What's the secret to talking simply about very difficult stuff, very complex stuff? Could you answer me that? Because microservices is already, I'm like overwhelmed. What is so? Could you recommend how to? Because just before we had Patrick Kwak, who is a communication specialist, and we were talking about communicating. So how would you say, what's the key to communicating simply about complex stuff?
That's a really hard question. And also, I know Pat very well. He's a former colleague of mine, a good friend. So in terms of these complex things, I think you have to pare it back to the underlying principles. I think if you can do that, then I think you can. I think that makes it easier to communicate. And for me, with microservices, again, it's about what you want to achieve when you're building software. And typically, we want to achieve, we want to create software that's maintainable or replaceable over the years, so we don't end up with these sort of big legacy systems. I think we want to be able to build software that allows us to scale the number of people who work on it, because that's been a traditional big problem. And then you get all the other things. So we want high throughput, high availability, reliability, all these things, which I think is what drew the big unicorns to the style in the first place, so the Netflixes and the Twitters. They wanted to do things that hadn't really been done before, with scaling. So. Yeah, but in terms of the secret of talking about it, I think trying to pare it back to what the outcomes you want are from the style.
Yeah, so it's kind of a universal rule, right? To have a goal, to have it a really clear one, and the one that you can count on, that you can somehow, have the KPIs to look at how you're doing with it. Okay, and let's leave. Since you had your talk, let's chill out. And I can imagine it can be stressful. How's the conference going? Have you seen what's happening with the drums? I can hear it drumming. It really feels like jungle, and all that room is green. So I haven't been there. Have you been there? Have you saw what's happening?
Yeah, well, to be fair, it's my first time here as well. So I'm just really excited to be here. Really pleased to be here. And yeah, it's just a great atmosphere here. There's a band going on. There's a bunch of people drumming. There's people dancing, taking videos. Yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah, for me, it definitely feels like a jungle, since like you can see someone's chatting, someone's playing the drums, someone is racing with the cars. So it's like, whew. And it's also quite hot in here. So I can feel like in somewhere in the Amazon jungle, right? So do you have plans on seeing Lithuania? Are you going to Kiev with the group? Because some guys are going there.
I wish I was. Unfortunately, due to circumstances at home, I have to actually go back tomorrow. So hopefully next year, if I'm invited back, I'll love to come back and maybe do that next year. But yeah, it's my first visit to Lithuania. So yeah, I'm just really pleased to be here. It's lovely to see new parts of the world and meet new people. So it's part of the reason I love doing this. Yeah,
it's nice to hear from you, because we can actually see some really nice view of Lithuania, of Vilnius, the capital here. I think it is too bright to turn the camera in that direction because I'm already blinded by the sun. Yeah. But it's really cool. It looks cool and nice. So do you do a lot of these conferences? Do you go around, or do you work with your projects at the moment?
That's a good question. I suppose I do more of this these days than I've done before. Um, I tend to do much more in the way of what you might call strategic consulting, I guess. So I spend time with CTOs, CIOs, that kind of thing, trying to help them with their technology strategies, trying to understand or help them work out where they want to be going with technology strategy and therefore business starting with business strategy. So that's probably half my time, and then the rest of the time I'm probably doing this or other things. So yeah, but I really enjoy public speaking. So it's yeah.
Okay. And you studied astrophysics in the 90s.
Yes.
So do you have time to work on that, or is it like your past? And have you taken anything for your current activities?
That's another great question. So I did. I was a terrible physicist. So I was joking that I wasn't smart enough to be a theoretical physicist, and I'm not diligent enough to be an experimental physicist. So, but I mean, actually, my talk today was partly about physics. It was about the Santa Fe Institute and complexity science and some of the underlying things in biology and organizational design and things. So what I found is I found it a very valuable background. It makes me curious about the way things work. It makes me curious to go and dive into things and find out why. Why is this thing the way it is? Not just, oh, that's how it is.
Do you still follow the astrophysics news? Are you still like, is it still your hobby or something?
Yeah, no, totally. I think actually probably more of my hobby these days is the philosophy of science and the history of science. So I tend to read lots of histories of individuals and of great scientists from the past and things. So and then try and keep up with archive. But there's so much stuff going on. I mean, one of the things I really like about the Santa Fe Institute, which is the thing I'm currently obsessing over, is the fact that it's not just one discipline. They try and bring lots of different disciplines together to study complexity. So that's something I find really fascinating, because in software we try and do the same thing. We try and bring, we always say cross-disciplinary teams produce better software, right? We want our testers there. We want everyone in the same place, and that's what they're trying to do with the different parts of science. Can we bring economists and biologists and physicists and chemists together and create something new? I think that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, you're definitely a the word stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Cross-disciplinary guy yourself. Welsh rugby fan, astrophysics, and now talking about microservices. And all the guys I meet here, they're like, we can talk about so crazy, like talk about Opera, even he's a developer. So it's also a very nice thing to do. So thank you, James Lewis. It was James Lewis, micro services specialist, I would say so. Astrophysics from the 90s, and also a Welsh rugby fan. So thanks you again.